Let me ask you something today. You've probably felt it before, that quiet, creeping voice that waits for your most ambitious moment to whisper, "But what if you're not good enough?" You've got the idea, the energy, maybe even the opportunity, but suddenly your chest tightens, your thoughts spiral. You question if you're ready, if you're capable, if you're worthy. You open the application and close it. You rehearse the pitch in your head but never send the email. You scroll past the gym. You avoid the stage. You stall, revise, delay. Because deep down, something inside you whispers that failing would confirm the worst thing you suspect about yourself. And so you wait. You overthink. You talk yourself out of your own potential. Doubt doesn't crash through your life like a storm. It sneaks in quietly like fog until you can't see who you are anymore. It doesn't shout, it suggests, it questions, it lingers. And if you listen long enough, it wins. But here's the truth, no one told you. Doubt is not a weakness, it's a signal. And when you learn how to master it, you become unstoppable. This isn't about being fearless, it's about moving forward, even with doubt strapped to your back. And that's what you're about to learn. Let's dive in. Number 1, what doubt really is. Doubt isn't a flaw in your character. It's not proof that you're weak, incapable, or broken. It's biology. It's evolution. At its core, self-doubt is the brain's ancient safety mechanism trying to protect you from perceived danger. Except now, it's misfiring in a world far removed from the life or death risks it evolved to face. Thousands of years ago, hesitation could save your life. The sound in the bushes might be a predator. The unfamiliar tribe might see you as a threat. Back then, doubt served as a survival instinct. It told you to pause, assess, avoid unnecessary risk. Fast forward to today, and your brain is still running that same outdated software, but now it triggers when you're about to speak up in a meeting, start a business, or post something honest online. It can't distinguish between real threats and emotional ones, so it reacts to both the same way, with fear, resistance, and hesitation. That voice in your head, the one that says you're not ready, or this could go badly, that's your inner critic, but it's not your enemy. It's your nervous system, trying to help you avoid shame, rejection, and failure. It's trying to protect your ego, the same way your ancestors tried to protect their lives. This is why high performers still feel doubt. Olympian CEOs, best-selling authors, they all have moments when they think, what if I'm not good enough? The difference isn't that they're immune to it. The difference is they understand what doubt is and how to manage it. They know it doesn't mean stop, it means proceed with awareness. They recognize the signal but don't surrender to it. It's a myth that confident people never doubt themselves. The truth is, many confident people have simply built a stronger relationship with doubt. They've trained their mind to act anyway, to interpret that internal discomfort as part of growth rather than a red flag to retreat. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt, it's the refusal to let doubt dictate your choices. Think of doubt like a smoke alarm. Its job is to alert you, not to tell you there's a fire. Sometimes it's right, there's a genuine issue to address, a skill you need to sharpen, a mistake to learn from. But most of the time, especially when you're stepping into something new, it's just reacting to unfamiliar territory. The smoke alarm doesn't know whether it's smoke from a house fire or just steam from a hot shower. It reacts the same way. And if you don't learn to interpret it correctly, you'll spend your life avoiding steam, mistaking growth for danger. This is what paralyzes so many people, not the situation itself, but their misreading of what their doubt actually means. Doubt also has a clever disguise. It often masquerades as logic or realism. It doesn't scream irrational things like, "You'll never succeed." Instead, it whispers, "Let's just wait a little longer." Or, "Maybe we should prepare more before taking the leap." It sounds reasonable. It feels smart. But that's how it traps you, by dressing up fear as wisdom. And because it's subtle, you believe it. You call it planning when it's really procrastination. You call it caution when it's really fear. But deep down, you know the difference. There's a moment always when your gut knows it's time to move, but doubt keeps you seated. It knows exactly when to speak, and its timing is perfect. Right before you hit send, right before you take the stage, right before you say yes to the opportunity you actually want, it waits, then whispers. But once you understand that doubt is a function, not a fact, you gain power over it. You realize that just because your mind throws up warning signs doesn't mean you're not ready. It just means your system is firing in response to perceived risk. That's not weakness, that's programming. And like any program, it can be updated. You don't need to eliminate doubt to succeed. You need to decode it. Listen, acknowledge, assess, but don't let it decide. Because when you treat doubt as data, not as a directive, it loses its power over you. You stop asking, why do I feel this way? And start asking, what is this trying to tell me? And what do I want to do anyway? Understanding doubt on this level is the first step toward mastering it. You'll never silence it completely, and you don't need to. You just need to know what it really is. Not a barrier, but a signal, a test, a moment asking you, are you going to let this stop you, or are you going to move anyway? Because once you stop fearing doubt, you start winning on a whole new level. Number 2, how doubt wins. Doubt doesn't have to shout to win. It just has to slow you down. That's how it gets its grip. Not through force, but through silence, through hesitation, through the endless loop of what-ifs that play on repeat in your head until you freeze. The real damage of doubt isn't the feeling itself, it's the inaction it causes. It's the space it creates between idea and execution, between intention and motion. It's that half-second pause before you speak up, that one-day delay before you launch, that tiny moment you overthink something so simple, and in that crack, doubt plants its roots. 1 second becomes a day becomes a week becomes a month, and before you know it, your dream is buried under a pile of almosts and maybes. Analysis paralysis is the perfect playground for doubt. You convince yourself that if you just had more information, more preparation, more time, then you'd feel ready. You make charts, take notes, watch videos, research endlessly, but you don't move. You confuse thinking with progress, when all you're really doing is hiding. Over-preparing becomes a shield, one that protects your ego from risk, but also keeps you from growing. It's like staring at the diving board, calculating the water temperature, analyzing your jump trajectory, but never actually jumping in. You feel productive, but you're just circling the drain of your own potential. Every plan you perfect without acting on becomes another stone in the weight that holds you back. Then there's the voice of social doubt, the one that whispers, what will they think? That one cuts deeper than we admit. You worry how your parents will respond if you fail. You wonder if your friends will laugh behind your back. You hesitate to post the idea, launch the brand, take the leap, because in the background of your mind, you see imaginary faces watching, judging, waiting for you to slip. That fear of embarrassment is powerful. It can make you choose silence over truth, comfort over courage. And most of the time, no one's actually watching. It's just your brain playing tricks, using old fears of rejection to keep you small. Because the human brain would rather be accepted and invisible than risk being seen and ridiculed. That instinct to protect your reputation often costs you the chance to build one. But the most dangerous part of doubt isn't the single missed opportunity. It's the compound effect of hesitation. One delayed decision doesn't feel like much. Skipping one workout, ghosting one message, putting off one idea that seems harmless. But hesitation builds momentum, just like action does. Every time you pause instead of act, it gets easier to pause the next time. That's how weeks disappear. That's how people wake up years later, wondering what happened to the dreams they once had. It wasn't sabotage. It wasn't some massive failure. It was just quiet, repeated hesitation. Death by 1,000 mental cuts. And here's the twisted part. Doubt feels safe. It feels logical. It wraps itself in the language of wisdom. Better to wait. Let's not rush this. We need to be smart, but underneath it all is fear. Fear of getting it wrong. Fear of being seen, trying, and not succeeding. Fear of being vulnerable. And unless you name that fear, unless you confront it, it becomes your default mode. You don't choose doubt. You drift into it. And it becomes so familiar that you start calling it realism or responsibility or humility. But in reality, it's just the subtle surrender of your own power. This is how doubt wins. Not with a bang, but with a pause. It doesn't need to destroy you. It just needs to delay you. It doesn't need to be louder than your dreams. It just needs to whisper louder than your actions. And once it does, your goals don't vanish. They just slowly slip out of reach, one hesitation at a time. The cost of doubt is not just missed opportunities, it's the erosion of your confidence. Because every time you don't show up for yourself, your subconscious takes notes. And over time, you stop trusting your own voice, your own instincts, your own vision. But this cycle isn't permanent. It breaks the moment you realize that motion beats perfection, that done is better than ready, and that boldness is a muscle built through use. Because doubt will always be there, but if you act through it, it loses its power. The more you move, the quieter it gets. The only way doubt truly wins is if you don't move at all. Number 3, the shift from doubt to decision. There comes a moment when you realize that doubt doesn't die in your head, it dies in your hands. Not when you think more, not when you wait for the perfect plan. Doubt begins to lose power the second you move. Because doubt feeds on delay. The longer you hesitate, the stronger it grows. It feeds off your overthinking, your fears, your imaginary scenarios. But the second you take action, real, physical, irreversible action, it starts to dissolve. Not because the fear is gone, but because you've shifted the battleground. You're no longer debating possibilities, you're building momentum. And momentum silences the voice of hesitation faster than any pep talk ever could. The truth is, you don't need to be sure, you just need to decide. Most people are waiting for certainty to appear before they act, but that's not how life works. Clarity doesn't precede action, it follows it. You don't figure everything out and then move. You move, and things begin to make sense as you go. The path reveals itself through motion. Think about it. How many times have you felt paralyzed with indecision, only to feel a wave of relief once you finally chose a direction, any direction? That's because your brain isn't built to hold open loops. It wants resolution. It craves forward movement, and when you commit, even imperfectly, you give your mind a new job, execution, not evaluation. Most people stay trapped because they're obsessed with the outcome. They want guarantees. They want to know that the relationship will work out, that the business will succeed, that the idea won't flop. But life doesn't work that way. The outcome is never guaranteed. The only thing you can control is the process. So instead of asking, what if this doesn't work? Start asking, what step can I take today that's in alignment with who I want to become? That one question can change everything, because it brings the power back to your feet, not your fears. It breaks the addiction to hypotheticals and puts you in contact with something real. Effort. Effort you can see. Effort you can feel. Effort that stacks. And that's where identity begins to shift. When you take action, especially when it's hard, especially when you're uncertain, you start telling a new story about who you are. You stop identifying as the overthinker, the hesitator, the one who always needs more time. You start seeing yourself as someone who moves, who commits, who acts. That's the real victory. Not just the external wins, but the internal transformation. I'm the kind of person who shows up, even when I don't feel ready. That identity is where unshakable confidence is born. Not from achieving perfect results, but from building a pattern of decisive action. Because the more often you move through uncertainty, the less scary it becomes. You build emotional resilience, you build evidence, and that evidence becomes the foundation of real self-belief. This isn't about being reckless, it's not about charging forward blindly, it's about understanding that the cost of inaction is always greater than the cost of imperfection. That hesitation is a form of self-sabotage disguised as caution. And that doubt, when left unchallenged, becomes the architect of your regret. But once you start choosing motion over meditation, decision over delay, the dynamic shifts. You stop sitting on the sidelines of your life, waiting for clarity to arrive like a package in the mail. You create clarity by building the path beneath your feet, step by step, action by action. Doubt is loudest before the first move, but the moment you move, its voice gets softer. Because you're no longer just imagining your life, you're living it. Every step forward quiets the static. Every small win weakens the resistance. And soon, what once felt terrifying becomes familiar terrain. Not because the risk is gone, but because you've changed. You've shifted from being someone ruled by doubt to someone who rules despite it. You've shifted from questioning everything to committing to something. And that's how mountains get moved. Not with confidence, but with courage. Not with certainty, but with choice. You decide, and then you figure it out. And in that choice, you reclaim your power. Number 4, how to build unbreakable self-trust. If doubt is the enemy of progress, then self-trust is your greatest weapon. When you trust yourself deeply, when your identity is built on the foundation of consistent follow-through and grounded self-respect, doubt has nowhere to land. It can knock, but it won't get in. True confidence doesn't come from faking positivity or chanting affirmations in the mirror. It comes from evidence, action, and aligned habits. You don't build unshakable self-trust all at once. It's layered, earned through your choices, and anchored in 5 core practices that can transform the way you move through the world. It starts with micro-promises, the tiny commitments you make to yourself that most people dismiss as insignificant. Waking up when you said you would, writing 1 paragraph a day, doing the 5-minute stretch, drinking a glass of water before your coffee. These acts seem trivial in isolation, but they compound. Every time you keep a small promise, your brain records it. You build an internal track record that says, I do what I say I'll do. That identity becomes powerful, not because you never break down, but because you know how to show up. And the best part, these small wins don't require motivation. They're frictionless, achievable, and entirely within your control. Over time, they become the scaffolding of a self-image that can't be easily shaken. But to protect that image, you need to guard your inputs. Doubt often isn't born from inside, it's absorbed. Social media, toxic people, endless comparison, and the constant stream of curated perfection we consume daily creates a feedback loop that erodes self-trust. Every scroll that shows someone doing better becomes a silent accusation that you're falling behind. Every highlight reel becomes another reason to question your path. That's why you need to audit what you allow into your mental space. Unfollow accounts that fuel insecurity. Take breaks from digital noise. Surround yourself with voices and environments that fuel your fire, not extinguish it. Self-trust can't grow in a field of poison. You need clarity, not chaos, to stay grounded in your own path. The next pillar is action initiation, a ritual or habit that starts your engine even when you don't feel like it. When you design a repeatable trigger for action, you remove decision fatigue and emotional friction. It could be as simple as putting on your shoes and stepping outside, opening your laptop and setting a 5-minute timer, or making your bed as the first signal that the day has begun. Rituals signal to your brain it's time to move, and movement creates momentum. You don't need to feel ready. You need a system that kicks you into motion, regardless of how you feel. Over time, this ritual becomes sacred. It represents your commitment, your readiness to act despite doubt or discomfort. It's the bridge between your intention and your execution. Even with rituals in action, you will stumble. That's inevitable. But the difference between those who trust themselves and those who don't is how they interpret failure. You need to reframe failure not as a threat, but as feedback. When something goes wrong, the old mindset says, I messed up, I'm not good enough. The new mindset says, that didn't work, what can I learn? This shift is critical. Because if your nervous system is trained to panic at every mistake, you'll never take bold steps. But if you train your body to see failure as part of the process, you stop fearing it. You can analyze, adjust, and continue without shame. That's a sign of real maturity. The ability to detach your identity from your performance and stay curious, not crushed. Over time, that creates a resilient nervous system, one that can handle pressure, uncertainty, and change without collapse. And finally, to close the loop and solidify your self-trust, you need to become evidence-driven. Stop chasing abstract goals that you constantly move further out of reach. Start tracking your wins. Not just the big milestones, but the tiny victories that prove you're becoming who you say you want to be. Write them down, review them weekly, celebrate them. This isn't fluff, it's data. When doubt whispers, you're not doing enough, you can open your record and respond, here's the proof that I am. This changes your internal narrative from emotional to factual. You build your self-image, not from fleeting feelings, but from hard evidence. That shift alone can quiet a lifetime of self-doubt. Put it all together, and you have a system. Micro-promises build consistency. Clean input protects clarity. Rituals trigger action. Reframed failure reduces fear, and evidence builds belief. This is how you build unbreakable self-trust, not by waiting to feel good about yourself, but by acting in alignment with your values day after day. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be intentional. When you do this long enough, something incredible happens. You stop second-guessing. You stop outsourcing your worth. And when doubt shows up, it no longer controls the room. It becomes background noise, something you hear but no longer obey, because you've built something stronger. You've built trust, not with the world, with yourself. And that kind of trust, that's unshakable. Number 5, real-world examples, stories. Doubt has touched everyone who's ever tried to build something meaningful. It isn't reserved for the weak, it's universal. But what separates those who move forward from those who freeze is not the absence of doubt, but the decision to keep going in spite of it. Take Serena Williams, for instance. One of the most dominant athletes in history, yet behind the scenes, she's spoken openly about struggling with imposter syndrome, wondering whether she truly belonged among the greats even after years of winning. Before major matches, she's battled nerves so intense they could paralyze a lesser mind. But instead of letting doubt dictate her actions, she used it as fuel. Evidence that she was stepping into something meaningful, something worth fighting for. The nerves were not a signal to stop. They were proof she cared. Then there's Brian Chesky, one of the co-founders of Airbnb. In the early days, the idea seemed absurd. renting out air mattresses in strangers' homes during a conference. Investors laughed them out of the room. Friends and family were skeptical. Chesky admitted that doubt crept in daily. No one believed in them, and frankly, even they weren't sure it would work. But they launched anyway. They sold cereal boxes to stay afloat. They refined their pitch hundreds of times. There was no perfect sign from the universe. They moved forward with shaky voices and a relentless refusal to give up. And what was once a ridiculous idea turned into a billion-dollar company, not because the doubt disappeared, but because they refused to let it decide for them. Or look at Cheryl Strayed, the author of Wild. Her memoir, Raw and Bruising, detailed a story of grief, addiction, and solo wilderness survival. Before publishing, she sat on the manuscript filled with anxiety. Would people judge her? Would they mock her pain? Would she regret the exposure? The doubt was deafening, but she hit publish anyway, and that one act of courage turned her life around. The book resonated globally, not because it was flawless, but because it was honest. Vulnerability always invites doubt, but it's also what makes our work human, unforgettable, and powerful. Even on a personal level, I felt the paralyzing weight of doubt. There have been times when I've sat in front of a screen, knowing what I wanted to say, but questioning if it mattered. Times I was terrified to share something real, scared it wouldn't be good enough, scared of silence. But I learned something over and over again. When you move despite that fear, when you put something out into the world without a safety net, you grow. And whether it succeeds or not, you've become someone stronger, someone who acts instead of hides. These stories aren't polished fairy tales. They're filled with tension, resistance, and real emotional risk. But that's what makes them powerful. Because every time someone moves through doubt, they create a path others can follow. And that's the real win. Not the trophy, not the recognition, but the act of reclaiming your voice from the grip of fear. Doubt didn't leave before the action. It rode alongside them, but it didn't get to steer. And that choice to act anyway is what separates stories never told from stories that change lives. Number 6, the truth about winning. Here's the truth most people won't tell you. Success is not about slaying doubt once and for all. It's not about reaching some mythical mental state where fear vanishes and confidence takes over every thought. That's a fantasy. The reality is far messier, far more human. Doubt never really disappears. It just gets quieter when you learn how to move with it. The people you admire, the ones who seem fearless, are not immune to second-guessing themselves. They've simply trained their nervous systems to respond differently. Where most people freeze or stall, they act. Where hesitation creeps in, they step forward anyway. It's not because they're more sure, it's because they've stopped requiring certainty to begin. This is the real secret of unshakable success. It's not about eliminating fear. It's about increasing your tolerance for it. You don't need more confidence, you need more courage. Courage to look doubt in the eye and say, "You're coming with me," but you don't get to drive. Courage to launch when you still feel shaky. Courage to post, pitch, speak, lead, and show up while the doubt still whispers in your ear. Winning isn't the absence of fear, it's the presence of forward motion. It's action in the midst of resistance. Because confidence isn't a prerequisite, it's a byproduct. It comes after you do the thing, after you speak up, after you take the shot, after you put yourself out there and realize you survived it. The people who win are not always the smartest, most talented, or most experienced. They're the ones who move when others stall. They don't wait for the storm to clear, they walk through it. And every step through doubt becomes another brick in the foundation of real earned confidence. So don't waste your life waiting for doubt to disappear. It won't. But you can change your relationship with it. You can stop seeing it as a wall and start using it as a compass. Because if you feel doubt, it probably means you're about to do something real, something brave, something that matters. And that's the very edge where success is born. Doubt will always whisper. It will always try to sit beside you. Lean in and ask, are you sure you're good enough? Are you ready? What if you fail? And for most of your life, maybe you've listened. Maybe you've paused, hesitated, waited for a sign that never came. But that ends now, because you're not here to obey doubt. You're here to win. And winning doesn't wait for perfect conditions. Winning begins the moment you move, especially when everything inside you says to hold back. So this is your moment. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Do the thing you've been putting off. Say what needs to be said. Share the post, send the message, make the call, sign up, show up. Whatever it is, take that first uncomfortable step. Let this be the day that silence is replaced with action. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to move. Because the longer you wait, the stronger doubt becomes. And the second you take action, it starts to shrink. Prove to yourself that you don't need permission. You don't need certainty. You need motion. This isn't about hype. It's about your life. Doubt will whisper, but you're not obligated to listen. You've got work to do, and it starts now. One action, one move, right now.